What stopped you from committing suicide? Just don't want to hurt my family. There is still beauty in the world and I want to see it. Parademics. A concrete flaw. This might get buried, but I was in an abusive relationship and was pretty much forced to be a dad when I never wanted to. I begged her to have an abortion. We were so awful together, I knew that bringing a child into it wouldn't make anything better. And who knew? I was right. My child was a lot more closer to his mommy as I worked 10 hours a day for 2 weeks in a row. We were already broken up. I wasn't doing well. So I was thinking about how to do it, and when etc. He never hated me or anything, he was just obsessed with his mom, and I was scared of holding him and stuff. He was about 10 months old, and I was getting ready to leave for work, and when I bent over and kissed his head, he looked up at me with his massive green eyes, soother in mouth, and extended his hands out to me, signaling that he wanted to be picked up. I was so happy. I held him and gave him tons of kisses and made him giggle. When I put him down to actually leave, he started to cry. Felt bad leaving for work that day. But I knew I couldn't just leave those big green eyes and curly brown hair behind. We're all in a much better place now. The thought hasn't crossed my mind since. Fear of pain. I'm immortal until my quest is fulfilled. It's boring, go out with a bang. The fact that my 3-year-old won't have her mother around. I was spiraling real bad after her dad broke up with me. Was feeling hopeless and pictured downing a whole bottle of painkillers and wine and falling asleep. After that, I thought of my daughter and how much I love her, so I couldn't bring myself to do it. That was about a month ago. My package from Amazon was delayed. I had booked a hotel room at my favorite hotel and got my exit bag together except the tubing for the helium tank I rented. Amazon delivered the tubing 2 days after I should have died. I even bought a body bag and adult diapers on Amazon. I wrote letters to my children and a note for the maid. Planned my last meal. I even bought 3 matching urns, 3 kids. Everything is sitting in a bag in my closet. This was 3 years ago. Now what stops me is I learned transcendental meditation and I have never had a suicidal thought/urge since the day I was taught it. No idea what to do with my bag of death. The term committing suicide is outdated and stigmatizing. You commit a crime or commit a sin. Suicide is neither. The acceptable and non-stigmatizing terms are died by suicide, ended their life, killed themselves. Please stop painting those with mental health issues as criminals and sinners. Hearing my dog bark. The thought of my kids not growing up with their mother. Never wanted them to think they weren't enough for me to stay alive. I didn't want to miss any moment of their future. My girlfriend and our 5 cats. I have a daughter that loves me. The fact that I can't think of a painless/instant way of suicide that is readily accessible. If I could find that, I will be dead within a week. Family. I just can't look them in the eyes whenever I've attempted it. My 2 best friends. I'm gonna keep it short, but I was planning to, and I said I was in a group chat, but I fell asleep before I did. I woke up to a bunch of messages to my now 2 best friends in a blind panic to see if I was okay. I realized then that people actually cared for me, and I promised them I wouldn't ever try ever again. That I have 3 amazing children and they deserve better. Fear of dying in pain, or that my last moments would be in pain. If I was to off myself, I'd want to be at peace during my last moments. Also the methods I never had access to a gun or carbon monoxide etc. God is one of my main reasons also. I want to live a life right, and also a fear of going to hell etc. My future and dreams, but that has changed now. I would like to say my family, but I can't, to be honest. Also I was actually considering doing it back in January. I planned it out and stuff. I was gonna get heroin and odd because it should be painless and relaxing in a way. I tried buying some, got scammed, tried looking for dealers in my area with no luck. So I just kept going, I guess. I wonder if I'd actually have went through it back then, because I wasn't in the best mindset then. My bucket list. Low-key have so much shit I wanna do before I die. Realizing how bad my family and friends would feel if I went through with it. and knowing that things do get better, no matter how bad I feel in the moment. The fact that I haven't gotten to tell all the people who hurt me to go fuck themselves. I hated the thought that if I died, they would tell everyone how close we were and how they don't understand why I did it. I have to make sure they know how I feel before I go. Gun wouldn't fire. The Lord of the Rings books. Reading those books was the only thing that brought me joy. The fact that no one would have been able to tell any of my long-distance friends, and realizing that for all they knew, I basically just left them without explanation. Not enough floors where I live. Music. I started to put my feelings into the songs I was listening to, channeling my emotions into it. Eventually, after the depression got boring, I started to relax and started changing my mood. Worked every time. My survival instinct. I only stopped due to my body automatically putting the knife away from my throat. I will actually never forget that night. I couldn't stand the thought of my mom and dad thinking they'd done something wrong. Wrote a note explaining that there was nothing for them to do, and when I wrote it out on paper it just became clear that it was not a path I should take, and that life was worth living if I just grabbed life by the throat more. Uncertainty. I don't know what happens after. And I don't know if I might be getting rid of a potential future, even though I can't see it right now. I had just graduated, took me a few years extra. The graduation was rather depressing, everyone else got a nice speech, their projects highlighted, and I was just kind of there. My favorite teacher, however, gave a small speech that I still have written down. It made my mother cry. It was in June of the year where I had started to self-harm. I'd been depressed for nearly 20 years but had never self-harmed. And when we left, it was the first time in all those years that my mother told me how hard it had been on them. I've always known it was hard for them. I can't imagine seeing your child want to give up on life is easy, not to mention every other obstacle I ran into. But I had plans to end it. Therapy wasn't doing its thing. Hell, I pretty much told my therapist I didn't want to continue seeing her, because there was no point. I sat in an empty bathtub, knife ready. But I didn't do anything. It's hard to say what it was, because honestly I don't know exactly. But I can say that a huge part of it was the love for my family. I realized that what I was doing would hurt them. And I didn't want them to hurt. In my darkest moment I was still able to see that I had people who cared about me, and even though I couldn't feel their love, even when it all felt empty, I could still find some small part of me that cared. Cared enough to stay alive, at least for the time being. So I went to therapy, and somehow I'm still here. Almost a year and a half later, and I'm the happiest I've ever been. I haven't thought of taking my life in a long time. Things aren't easy, I doubt they'll ever be, and I'm fairly certain I'm going to have to live with my depression for the rest of my life, at least to some extent. But the progress I've made is enormous. Writing a letter to my dad and picturing how absolutely devastated he'd be when they called him. I couldn't stand the thought of hurting my mother. I was typing out goodbye texts to send to everyone at the same time, when I randomly noticed a typo and went to fix it. Grandma took me out of my funk for just long enough to realize what I was doing and get help. Math. I calculated the amount wrong by a lot. So I'm still alive today because 19-year-old me could divide properly. Weed. Kids depend on me. People didn't allow me, and took me away before I could do jump, the first time. Second time I failed alco poisoning. Third time I was stopped again whilst trying to get crushed on a road. Now I'm doing semi-okay, so I'm happy I'm here. Thankfully nobody will see this, but nothing actually stopped me. I would have followed through each time, but every time it seemed as if my body would psychologically reject my attempts and I would puke up all the pills I took. I guess it could have been the anxiety of what I was going through with that made me vomit. I was scared of the process, but I felt like I was ready to go each time, and each time. Vomit. My last attempt I woke up with vomit on the floor, and grew very frustrated that I didn't just go the way I wanted to, but also kinda came to the conclusion that it would have been selfish/traumatic to the people who would have found me, so I had given up finally after attempt number 5. Suicide isn't for me, I suppose. Woman shrugging. Chance. Played Russian roulette. Well, the first time I actually tried, I wasn't smart enough to research my chosen method and it didn't kill me. Full bottle of OTC sleep aid. Every time I have thought about it or planned it since then, I have never followed through because I couldn't betray my mama like that. She worked too hard to give me the best chance she could and her life was very difficult. It would be a slap in the face for her and she doesn't deserve that, even if I feel like I don't deserve to live.